It is a great honor and a great pleasure to present in my alma mater. And this is a small tribute to the Winter Olympics, Levich's take on Winter Olympics. I will be, I'll just, I hope I will be able to handle it. Yeah, we can move it. So my talk will, I better stabilize it. How about this? Is it okay? Okay. My talk will be about second language acquisition, and I'm happy that I will be able to bootstrap a little bit on the previous talks. We are tapping into the same agenda from different perspectives. Is there morphological decomposition in second language learners? And one of the points of view is that second language learners do not decompose morphologically complex words, and in particular, inflected words. And one of the points of view is expressed by the shallow structure hypothesis that states that second language learners rely on shallow morphological processing and they basically retrieve lexical meanings. Another model that is very often applied to second language morphological decomposition is the declarative procedural model by Michael Ullman. According to this model, late second language learners rely on declarative memory and not on procedural memory. So they rely on whole word storage and retrieval instead of decomposition. And his work has been mostly on regular English inflection. So at some unspecified level of proficiency, they switch to procedural decomposition route. And indeed, there are several data sets, mostly coming from the groups that generated this hypothesis and this idea, showing that there is a difference in native language processing and second language processing of inflected words. As an example, a study of German participles using a mass priming paradigm with native speakers of Polish showed diverging results for native speakers of German and second language learners of German. In particular, with irregularly inflected participles, both groups of participants showed partial priming. But with regular German participles, second language learners showed no priming at all, whereas native speakers showed full priming. These are somewhat puzzling results because it is very hard to come up with the mechanism underlying such decomposition when second language learners would, for some reason, show sensitivity to irregular verb structure, irregular participle structure, but no, which is much more complex and opaque, but show no sensitivity to regular structure. But at least such data sets exist out there in the literature. And then there is the default argument. The mental lexicon in second language learners is obviously smaller than in a native language, and therefore second language learners, just based on common sense, do not store as many inflected words. And indeed, there are several a sizable number of studies out there in the literature showing that second language learners do decompose inflected words. For example, this study using English as the target language and a mass priming paradigm with three groups of participants: native speakers of English and two groups of second language learners with L1, the first language, the native language, Serbian and Chinese, showed again that, well, not again, unlike the studies produced by Harold Klassen, for example, it shows decomposition of regular verbs across the board in all three groups of participants. When it gets to irregular verbs, the effect depends on two factors: the complexity involved in the allomorphy and the language background. So with the irregular nested pattern, draw, English speakers and Serbian speakers were able to show the decomposition effect, but not Chinese. And with irregular change stem verbs such as ran, run, only native speakers showed the effect. Another study that we conducted on Russian verbal morphology shows, again, the role of morphological complexity and, in our case, proficiency level. Don't look at the left pane, look at the right pane, because the right pane shows you the effects for low-frequency verbs in our second language learners, the red bars, and native Russian controls, the gray bars. So what you can see, we used three categories of three types of verbs: regular, semi-regular, and irregular. So the target language is Russian. And we used several proficiency levels that are encoded by numbers. This is the standard way based on oral proficiency testing in the United States. 2, 2+, and 3. All three are very proficient, highly proficient levels. And as you can see, the priming effect is there in all three learner groups for regular verbs, transparent verbs. Then they are there for two top proficiency groups for semi-regular verbs, and they are only for the top proficiency group for irregular verbs. So there is a conflict. So it looks like the shallow structure hypothesis and the declarative procedural model are not really adequate. There are data sets that show decomposition. So, but then there is something else going on. If you get to the sentence level, there are irrefutable facts about second language learners showing insensitivity to grammatical markers at in a morphosyntactic level in sentence processing. For example, Chinese learners of English are notorious for being insensitive to the plural S marker, even if they are proficient speakers of English. We showed something similar with, again, Russian speakers processing gender agreement in English sentences in a self-paced reading task, just to give you some examples. So there is some kind of a paradox, obviously, going on. If second language learners rely on lexical meanings of words and can only access them undecomposed, then they need to store all those word forms. But they don't have enough storage space, so they can't. But on the other hand, if second language learners decompose inflected words, why are they insensitive to morphosyntax at the sentence level? So we carried out several experiments, 2 lexical decision tasks and a cross-model priming task that we think is a first step to finding a way out of this logical impasse. Russian has an inflectional system for noun inflection similar to the Latin one, with the 6 cases, 2 numbers, and 3 inflectional types. And we decided to use this the properties of the Russian nominal paradigm to show 2 phenomena. Number one, that second language learners do indeed decompose inflected words. And number 2, they focus on the lexical side of things and less so on morphosyntactic information. And in order to do that, we relied on the processing costs for different cases and inflections in the lexical decision tasks, and on the priming effects in 2-word phrases in the cross-modal priming task. Sorry, I'm not very skillful with those charts. I did my best. No deep intention, just for illustrative purposes. If a listener is presented with an inflection Russian word koshkai, which is cat in the instrumental, by the cat, if decomposition takes place, the stem, the root, the lexical meaning is accessed. And this is what your average lexical decision task is aiming at, access the lexical meaning, but that's not the end of the story. You still need to process the inflection oi, to put them together and to figure out that this indeed means by the cat. And this is a very trivial observation, but sometimes it is overlooked when we interpret our data, because we tend to focus on the lexical part and forget why this decomposition and recomposition needs to take place. So in other words, decomposition leads to the interpretation of the lexical meaning of the stem, to the processing of the inflection, and then to recomposition and sentence integration. In our lexical decision task, we used masculine and feminine nouns with the avert and 0 inflections in the nominative, which is the citation case, and the genitive, which is an oblique case. And we controlled for surface and lemma frequency and length in phonemes across our critical conditions. To give you an idea of what the Russian paradigm looks like, 6 cases, singular and plural. You have 3 inflectional types. In the feminine inflection, you would have the nominative bumaga, paper, with an avert inflection, and then the genitive plural has a 0 inflection, bumak, which is kind of rare for an oblique case in Russian to have a 0 inflection. And that condition was crossed with the masculine forms in the paradigm, where the nominative has a 0 inflection, but the genitive singular has the a inflection, an avert a inflection. So on the surface, they're really crossed, 0 versus a on the surface. And I have provided those numbers here. These are this is the average occurrence of each case based on the corpus data, on the Russian national corpus. So you can see that while the numbers are not exactly the same, they, within the singular and the plural, they're quite comparable. For example, in the feminine, roughly 1/3 is the nominative, and roughly 1/3 is the genitive plural within the plural paradigm. So these are our critical comparisons. Bumaga, nominative, with an avert inflection, then zavod, factory, 0 inflection in the nominative, zavoda, genitive with a, and bumak, 0 again in the genitive. And you can come up with several sets of predictions based on decomposition costs. Bumaga should take as long as zavoda. You physically do the same thing, and that should take longer than zavod and bumak. Based on case frequency, they're pretty much the same, plus minus. Based on case hierarchy, the nominative should take shorter than the genitive. So those were our basic predictions. And I'm showing you the participant data for all three experiments. Right now we're looking at LDT1, lexical decision 1, 22 native speakers and 22 second language learners with L1 English, American and British participants. Since we do all our testing online, we were able to tap into different populations of speakers across the world, like yes. Here are the results of the first lexical decision experiment for Russian native speakers, native controls. And as we predicted, the nominative takes shorter, the genitive takes longer, and this is regardless of whether the inflection is overt or zero. So bumaga and zavod take exactly the same time to process, and bumak and zavoda take longer. You have an obvious processing cost. When we look at second language learners, they don't show any difference between bumaga and bumak. In other words, they are faster at processing bumak, which is a difficult form for native speakers. So they have this fake advantage. They access the stem very fast and they're happy. They access the lexical meaning, and apparently that's where they stop. So we wanted to complement those results. What are we doing with time? Okay. So to complement those results, we had several nominative blocks, again, balanced for surface and lemma frequency, but with manipulated length, disyllabic, trisyllabic, and across all the conjugation types. Bumaga, zavod, titrat, ukol, volna, all those take the same amount of time, both in first and second language speakers. So just to summarize the results of LDT1, first and second language speakers do access Russian-inflected nominative nouns undecomposed. There is no processing cost for the nominative, so this indicates that there is a special status for the citation form in the mental lexicon. Both groups show decomposition costs for oblique cases. However, while second language learners, while native speakers show a processing cost for the zero-inflected genitive form, second language learners do not incur any additional processing costs for zero-inflected oblique nouns. So we were curious, so we decided we would manipulate our materials a little bit and shoot for a slightly high proficiency level and try to dig out this effect of bumak, this puzzling effect of no processing cost for such a strange form. And for the second set of experiments, we had our second language learners broken down by those proficiency levels, which is a big deal in the United States because you need to pay an independent company who would test them and assign those ratings independently. So that those ratings are kind of set in stone. If it's a 2+, it's not a 3. And all those are very, very highly proficient speakers. So with the native speakers, we got the same effect. The nominative doesn't show any processing costs, but the genitive shows the processing costs for both bumaga and zavod, both avertive inflection and zero inflection. Second language learners, I'm showing you the proficiency level 2 plus. Remember, we had 2, 2 plus, 3, 3 plus. So 2 plus is right after 2, and we had a very small sample in 2, and 2 is comparable to the group in the previous experiment. So this is the lowest group. And there was nothing. But starting with 2 plus and all the way up, we finally dug up this effect for the genitive plural with a zero inflection. It starts to show a processing cost. So all of a sudden, they start to take longer processing bumak than bumaga, as native speakers do. That's basically the story. Certainly proficiency helps, but the bottom line is that unless you reach this high level of proficiency, somehow you have this false advantage. And a very, very quick summary of the cross-model priming experiment that also shows similarities and differences in native speakers and second language learners. We used phrases. The prime was the adjective that was ambiguously coded for case, новый, that could be either a high frequency genitive case or a low frequency instrumental case, новый, presented by itself. And then it was followed, we had 3 lists. So on one list it was followed by the nominative, машина, new car. And on the other list it was машины, genitive, of the car. On the third list it was машиной, машиной, by the car. So we wanted to see how exactly, the kind of predictions that second language learners develop based on their knowledge of the case system of Russian. And the predictions were that the genitive and the instrumental would take longer than the nominative, both in native speakers and second language learners. However, native speakers should show sensitivity to differences in case frequencies and develop different predictions. Instrumental would take longer in a priming, in a cross-model priming task than the genitive, but for second language learners, they would not show any difference. And this is the bar chart. It's a little bit crowded. What I wanted to show you is that this ability this sensitivity to case frequency gradually develops. There is nothing at level 2, there is nothing at level 2+, then you have marginal significance at 3 and 3+, something between 0.5 and 0.05 and 0.1. And then it's highly significant in native speakers. So basically, we showed this developmental trend developing sensitivity to case. I'm getting to the end. How is morphological processing in second language learners similar to native speakers? They do decompose inflected words. They access lexical meanings of words through their stems. They show sensitivity to the status of the case, citation versus oblique case, and they do not show decomposition cost for the nominative, for the citation form. How are they different from native speakers? They show a developmental trajectory in morphological processing, at least in 2 phenomena that we documented in those experiments. Number one, they only very high proficiency second language learners go through recomposition and rechecking for zero-inflected nouns in an oblique case. And only very high proficiency second language learners develop predictions based on case frequency that lead to the priming effects in cross-model priming. I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you about the manipulation in the second lexical decision task. We broke our nonce words so that we used a real stem and a real inflection, but in an illegal combination. we did it explicitly to draw the attention to the rechecking stage. Okay, the root is there, it's good. The inflection is there, you recognize it, it's good. But combine them together and see if it's a word. So the conclusion. We think that we have good evidence that second language learners do decompose inflected words to access lexical meaning. They do not always recompose inflected words. And this, with this in mind, we kind of can account for those conflicting pieces of evidence that are out there, that second language learners store less words in the mental lexicon, but they're still efficient at lexical access, but they're inefficient at morphosyntactic processing. So we think that the possible explanation is that they do decompose, they do not always recompose and recheck. This study was supported by the Center for Advanced Study of Language at the University of Maryland. I have two collaborators on this particular project, Anna Lukyanchenko and Lana Cook, and we also thank several colleagues who helped us, like Scott Jackson and Jeff Witzel, with the programming and remote DMDX side of things. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your talk again. Did you take a look at the lexical decision errors in the second experiment where you used incompatible inflections with existing roots? And did the second language learners make more mistakes or not?
This is a very good question. I never even mentioned accuracy rates, but across the board, the genitive plural with the zero inflection gave rise to an increased number of errors, both in native speakers and second language learners. That was the most difficult condition. We didn't look specifically at errors in nonce words. We were not really interested. But of course, across the board, they lead to a greater error rate. We just don't analyze them.
It's interesting, but probably when they are happy to recognize the root, the second language learners make more mistakes with existing roots and no and.
Good point.
So for the developmental trajectory data that you showed in your last experiment, I mean, the pattern between the low proficiency and the high proficiency learners was quite similar, just that only the higher ones had a significant effect. Did you check for the amount of variation in the low proficiency versus high proficiency learners to see whether that actually gives you the significant effect, you know, sort of less variation, less variance in the higher proficient learners might actually push the effect into significance?
That's an excellent comment, actually. If you got a glimpse of the participant distribution, there were very few people in the level 2 group and in the level 3+ group, just a handful. But because of enormous variation at the lower proficiency end, what looked like more significance, more difference in the bars did not turn out to be significant. We need more power there. But with 3+, even with a handful of speakers, they already trended out pretty well because the variability was lower, and so the results were more robust. Good point.
Thank you. A very nice talk. Very interesting results. I think that Anna Klimovich-Smith's talk later on, and I think Alina's talk and my talk will also be very relevant to this inflectional derivational distinction, at least in our case in L1. In particular, what brain systems are engaged by these different kinds of morpheme. But I was just wanted a little footnote really to your interesting findings with the zero inflection, because we did some experiments Jana Slachta and Mirjana Bozic in Polish. We were rather linguistically naive, and we've established in English that if you compare dog with dogs or play with plays, the uninflected form does not engage any kind of neural machinery, especially left hemisphere, that's involved in processing inflectional morphology. But then when we went to Polish, and we had, similar to Russian, and obviously in this respect, nominative accusative nouns like dom and domu, somewhat to our naive surprise, dom activated the selective left hemisphere system just as strongly as domu. And we had some arguments with the reviewers who said, well, you can't just say there's zero inflection, it's a part of an inflectional system and so forth. But your results clearly support that in languages like Slavic and so forth.
Thank you very much. And we have read, I personally have read this paper on Polish maybe 5 or 10 times, and because we wanted, we're actually in the process of designing a similar experiment with Russian, just to dig out this sensitivity to inflectional paradigm, even in uninflected, overtly uninflected words. We'll compare them to something like adverbs, really uninflected parts of speech. Right.